this I need to throw some caveats out here, okay? And I want to try to be responsible here. This dude is getting flamed for this article right now. I don't even think this article is very out of pocket. I think it's pretty even-handed, but I do just want to put a disclaimer out there that this report got a lot of people really mad. And we're going to sort of circle back to this point in a little bit here. But there's something weird going on with Superman where it feels like there's this whole contingent of fans that are treating Superman completely differently than a lot of other movies and are really blind to some of the potential things that could be going wrong with this film or to the complications that might be happening with the production of this film. And it's weird because like there have been various people throughout this process that have reported on this, right? Like Jeff's reported on this a little bit. I've certainly heard things and I've not been shy about talking about what I've heard. But it's like every time somebody hears something and then reports it, they get like dogpiled. And it really does create this weird environment of like, I don't know, it almost feels political or whatever, you know? And people want to like be on one side or the other and defend it, this, that, second, and third. Guys, like, I'm just going to report it straight, okay? So I'm gonna just go through the article, but I do want to say, not everybody that has seen this screening, not everybody that's plugged in, not all of the insiders agree with this reporting. Okay? So with that being said, I hope I covered my ass enough. Let's check this out. Superman faced major changes after test screenings, reshoots, less humor, shorter runtime, new editor, and composer. Now, that is a hell of a headline, I will say. That is a hell of a headline. And so I think it's fair that some people were like, bro, what? But anyway, let's read on. After today's reveal of the Superman runtime, the real story might be what's happening behind the scenes. I started asking around and uncovered that the road to release has been anything but smooth for DC Studios' flagship reboot. Tensions are high at Warner Bros., where CEO David Zaslav and DC Studios leads James Gunn and Peter Safran are scrutinizing every frame to avoid another franchise misfire. So, look, I'm just going to stop for a second here. So far, this does not actually, this lines up with a lot of stuff we've heard. You know, we've been reporting about this. You know, not a lot of people wanted to talk about the bad screening, you know, and Jeff got a lot of shit for being one of the first people that talked about it. But it does feel like there was reporting about a bad screening late last year. I speculated that was why he canceled the CCX appearance, right? So far, nothing crazy. Sources close to the production say the film received a mixed reception at an earlier test screening, triggering a cascade of changes. Gunn's original cut apparently leaned heavier on humor, something the execs weren't entirely sold on. In response, several comedic beats were cut, trimming down both tone and runtime. More intriguingly, one of the film's editors was quietly removed mid-process, leading to a slight rework of the film's structure. This was somewhat of a tweak and signaled a slight shift in how the story was being presented. Some key sequences were shuffled, and minor scenes were added during recent reshoots, okay? So, again, this lines up, this tracks. We have other reports from good people that we've talked about that corroborate a lot of this stuff, okay? Now, maybe they weren't as specific as he's being here in the reporting, and I will also say this editor thing, that is kind of new. I did not hear about a new editor coming in, and I will be honest, that's not a good sign. Like, that's never a good sign, to be honest with you. So that's a little bit weird. Let's keep going, though. The music department wasn't spared either. A second composer was brought in late in the game to reshape the score, suggesting the tone may have been in flux as recently as a few weeks ago. Okay, now that's a little weird. Okay. It's all part of what one insider described as slight course correction. Now, okay. So is it a slight course correction or not? You know what I mean? Because it kind of feels like we're getting a little mixed messages here. He goes on to say, although about 25 minutes of footage have been trimmed out of earlier versions, giving the final cut a leaner feel, the adjustments hint at the studio anxious to get it right, especially with this being the first major installment of the rebooted DC universe. The last test screening is set to happen this week. Whether these 11th hour changes will pay off remains to be seen, but there's a tad more confidence now that the finished product, which is officially in the can, turns out to be a great film. Okay, now to add to the validity of this report, there's an insider that we've covered from time to time called Viewer Anon. Viewer Anon also corroborated this. There were multiple other insiders that corroborated this across Reddit, Twitter, etc. So it does seem like this is real. Okay, so let's kind of go through it. Humor toned down. Okay, again, we talked about this. I think it makes sense. Now, I will add one small detail to this, and this is potentially spoilery. And I know I said we weren't going to do spoilers, but this is potentially spoilery. I'm only bringing it up because I'm fairly confident that it has been removed from the film. What I'm talking about is the super shit leak. We talked about this. We might have even talked about this on stream. And I don't remember exactly, but I might have even said, as justification for talking about it on stream, I was like, dude, I want them to remove this. So I kind of made a big stink of it. Okay. So, yeah, super shit. How to explain this? Apparently, there was going to be a thing where the people of Earth are going to turn on Clark, right? And you've seen it in the trailer. The one guy throws a beer can at him, which, by the way, one of the changes you can see right away for yourself between the first trailer and the second trailer is in the first trailer, David flinches when he gets hit with the can. That has been removed in the second trailer. He makes no reaction to it whatsoever. So they must have got some notes, or maybe they heard some feedback online that felt weird, that he would flinch with the can. But like, that's just one small example. They have changed that from trailer 1 to trailer 2. But we did hear that super shit rumor was real. There's another side to this that is potentially about mutant monkeys being used as a bot farm by Lex Luthor. Now, look, maybe this is still in there. Maybe the super shit element was taken away. Maybe there's still bot farms. I don't really know. But the reason I bring this up is when the super shit rumor first broke, Viewer Anon was saying that it's real and it's also one of his favorite jokes. And in the Reddit post that he made over the past couple of days, he said they removed some of this humor, including one of my favorite jokes. Okay? And hey, mods, you're earning your pay today because I see the bots coming in and I appreciate you taking care of them. We're just got a deal. I don't know what it is. I don't know why. I mean, we all know why, but it is what it is. We're just gonna have to push through. So because Viewer Anon said that, I'm kind of hoping that they removed it. Hopefully, please, for the love of God. But just in general, there were other things I heard about this film that I was like kind of annoyed by. Now, I've always said, and I've always tried to be fair, that, you know, Gunn has his style. He has his sensibility. I think it's like juvenile. It's infantile. And sometimes it can be funny. I'm not a big fan of it. I don't like Peacemaker. I didn't really like his Suicide Squad because it's just like too much for me. But I like the Guardians movies, particularly the first one. So, you know, I can handle some of it. I like some of the Gunn stuff. But for Superman, it didn't feel right. And some of the things I heard, I was like, including super shit, for sure. But other stuff too, you know, and I'm like, I don't know about that. Well, according to the reporting, again, from multiple insiders, the jokes have been removed. There's a lot of jokes that have been removed from the film, and I think that's good. I think that's good. Now, let's talk about the editing. Man, this one's kind of hard to spin in a positive way, but I will say that from what I understand, from what I've heard, the film has a weird structure. It is almost more like an anthology of small stories than it is a straight narrative. Okay, and that sounds weird for sure, but with the right framing, that can work. Okay, so that was something we heard. That was something we heard very very early on. I'm trying to be vague. You know what I mean? I'm trying to keep it as vague as possible, but I know for sure that was also something that people at Warner Brothers were like, like, man, I'm trying to be so fair here, but I think that the truth is, and this is what I've heard, and it really feels like after we have this new information that this is actually what it was. Man, some people did not like that first cut, guys. Like that's just what it is. There were some people within Warner Brothers that like just really did not like this first cut, and I think that's pretty obvious now. Right? So, restructuring, small tweaks. Is this to... Because you notice in the article, it uses language like changing scenes around. And you might be like, what? You can't just do that. But if it's like more of an anthology kind of thing, you can do that, actually. So... it seems like it's keeping its form. It's not like they were like, bro, you need this to just have a fucking narrative. Superman saves this thing. What the hell? Like, I don't think that's what it is. But it was more like, hey, how can we make this perhaps a little bit more straight? And you know, we don't love this maybe jumping around. Or they did think jumping around made it flow better. It's hard to say for sure. But the thing with the editor is, like, it's tough a little bit. I didn't look too far into this. Like there would be some things that would be shocking about this. For instance, like if this is an editor that Gunn worked with a lot and he got quietly let go, that unfortunately implies Warner Brothers really putting the squeeze on James. I didn't even look into that enough. Maybe that'll come out. If that's what this is, that's tough. That would really imply that Warner Brothers is squeezing hard. I mean, I think at this point they're squeezing either way. But I think what Gunn would tell you is this is like, because this is the line from Warner Bros. They're going to be like, this is normal. This is what you do when you make a movie. The truth is that, I mean, that's half true. That's half true. This is what you do when you make a movie that like you have to live in or die by. Like this is what you do when you make a movie that is so important to the corporation that like there are certain sensibilities. It's commercial art. And I'm sure Gunn is no stranger to the confines and the constraints of commercial art. You know what I mean? Like, I'm absolutely positive that he understands that. So in his mind, and hopefully this is actually just what it is, it's possible this is just like sort of the way you play ball as a artiste, you know, because Gunn is the writer-director. He's also the president of the company, so like he has to wear that hat and he has to take those considerations. You know, maybe that's Safran is sort of there as the voice of reason to help Gunn across because, you know, all filmmakers have ego, you know, and especially if you're the writer, director, and president, I'm absolutely certain he probably didn't want to change this thing. But if it's a team effort, you know, they're putting millions of dollars on the line, you know, Warner Brothers, their company could live or die by this. Like, of course, you gotta make some concessions. And so in a certain sense, from a certain angle, you could consider all of this normal insofar as it's a really important movie and movies are hard to make. And when you got a lot on the line, like, yeah, dude, you got to play ball and you got to tweak and you got to make compromises. Okay. So it absolutely could be being blown out of proportion. That's what I'm trying to say. And I'm trying to be fair. But here's the other side of this. I think it's also true that if this was a Marvel movie, people would be shitting on it so hard for having these problems. Gunn did sort of scare away the press, and he has scared a lot of people from wanting to report on this in any kind of meaningful way. And that's a shame because it makes it so we can't authentically know for sure what's going on. Are there a lot of people that know what's going on and they just don't want to get gunned down on social media or whatever? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the weird spot we're in. And I think that if this was a Marvel movie, if we're about to talk about Fantastic Four, right? And if I were reporting to you guys that Fantastic Four brought in a new composer 2 weeks ago and fired an editor quietly, like, let's be real. Like, the chat would be like, we're cooked. It's over again. You know what I mean? And Twitter damn sure would be. Twitter would be going crazy, okay? So, I think it's fair to say that, like, dude, the Superman movie is weird in the sense that, like, a lot of people are just defending it. A lot of people are turning a blind eye to what they would probably talk a lot about if it was a Marvel movie. So there is something weird going on with that, and that's kind of weird and strange, right? Now, I want to say, to sort of just wrap it all up, because again, this screening is, I would say it's either happening tonight or tomorrow night, I would assume. I guess they could do it over the weekend, but they probably don't want to do that. So I would assume the actual screening of this new cut, which is probably damn close to the final cut. Like, Gunn is technically saying, like, if you notice online recently, James said the 202-minute thing is not true. I think the reason he can get away with that is because I think he knows the movie's still changing. He's not necessarily saying that, but, like, dude, if this screening goes really badly, they will change it again, 100%, and they should. Like, we don't have to play this weird game where we're, like, adding all this judgment to it. Like, at the end of the day, I want a really good fucking Superman movie. If this screening is bad, then they should make last-minute changes. They should work right up till the last minute and make sure it is as good of a movie as it possibly can, okay? But I'm going to be honest with you. To me, this feels like a dream come true. This feels like exactly the stuff I want to hear. Now, I'll throw one caveat in there before I, like, gush about this stuff, because, like, I actually think this is awesome. One problem, though. There's some people that are categorizing this as they just had to lean into nostalgia because, like, Gunn made a Gunn Superman, and then they were like, no, and, like, stripped out all that shit, and then they had no choice but to just lean on nostalgia. I'm not necessarily framing it that way, but I do want to acknowledge that that's a narrative out there. And if that's true, that could go a bad way, man. That could go a bad way. That could end up not being good. But I like nostalgia. I'm kind of a sucker for that shit. So, like, nostalgia Superman, you know, nostalgia Donner, which, by the way, doesn't that make you wonder? Isn't it kind of interesting that McQuarrie made those comments about the nostalgia play? That's a small town, Hollywood. Like, he probably, I mean, he could potentially be aware of exactly what is going on with Gunn Superman. But that's just my speculation. But I think, frankly, if you're telling me that Warner Brothers is like, hey, James, no super shit. Hey, James, no, that joke, no. That joke, no. Also, we need to play heavier into nostalgia, and we need to restructure this a bit so it's a little bit more understandable. I mean, all of that sounds fantastic to me. My biggest concerns was the James Gunn humor, like, frankly. So if they're putting the squeeze on that and the kibosh on that and they're kind of pulling it back, oh, man, like, dude, I kind of love it. Like, to me, I'm like, hell yeah. And, you know, when I saw the footage at CinemaCon, dude, that was what finally started to win me over on the movie. I did not like that first trailer, man. And the footage and the vibes of what you get at CinemaCon, that felt good, you know? And so if that's what they've sort of turned the movie into, or rather, if that's the tone they're just going to lean into for the film, like, I'm about that life. I think that could actually be great. So, you know, you're going to have to decide for yourself. And as you've seen in chat, right, there's a lot of people trying to claim this is like the end of Gunn and it's all over. And I'm not going to lie, like, it is potentially bad news. It's definitely news. It's definitely worth talking about. And it is weird that nobody wants to, like, tell the truth about what's happening with Gunn Superman. But there is also this other side, guys, that's totally fair and real as well. And that is that, dude, it's hard to make fucking movies, and this is a big deal, and they should compromise. They should change it. Now, you know, new composer, new editor, sure, little wild, red flags, but ultimately, I guess we're just going to have to see. Like, if it's a good movie, are we going to be mad that they tweaked it in the 11th hour? Like, I don't really think so. I think what I want the most is a good, fun, and successful Superman movie, because that allows some of these other projects to be successful. It allows you to build out a canon, and it would be great for the space itself. Like, it's not going to be good for Doomsday if Superman bombs. You know, it's not going to be good for the MCU if Superman comes out and it's like whack as fuck. I mean, especially if it's like Guardians whack, because that's Marvel. So, like, if he basically, because this would be really bad. Imagine if Gunn made a really Marvel-y Superman, and it's just like, that is the exact thing that people just are not feeling, and then you further fatigue the Marvel fans about it as well, you know? Like, that's potentially just, that's a snowball of, like, really bad shit. So, if they're changing this thing so they can avoid that, hell yeah. Like, that's actually a positive. So those are my thoughts on Superman. Thanks for watching. And if you like this clip, smash a like on the actual video and subscribe to this channel. That way more of these clips get into your feed. I've also linked the full episode below if you want to check out the entire thing, including the Q&A we do with fans. You can also watch this show live. We do it live Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. And you can also find all of my content, including the videos I put on my main YouTube channel, on the podcast feed.